Welcome to the Caregiver Relief Podcast. I'm Diane Carbo, RN, a patient care advocate. This episode is sponsored by myvitalvault.net, your all-in-one life organizer for aging adults and caregivers. It's designed to help you securely store your essential legal, medical, and emergency information in one easy-to-access place. Because when a crisis hits, being prepared can make all the difference. Join our Caregiver Relief community, a warm, welcoming space where you can connect with other caregivers, ask questions, share stories, and find support from people who truly understand. Visit community.caregiverrelief.com to join now, because caregiving is one of the hardest and most meaningful things you'll ever do, and no one should have to do it alone. And if this episode speaks to you, please take a moment to like, share, or comment. Every click helps us reach more caregivers who need encouragement, resources, and hope. Today, we're tackling a subject that's often not only uncomfortable, but absolutely essential: family finances. Joining me is Cameron Huddleston, a winning journalist, personal finance expert, and author of Mom and Dad, We Need to Talk: How to Have Essential Conversations with Your Parents About Their Finances. With over 20 years of experience writing for major outlets like Forbes, Klinginger's, and MSN, and appearances on CNN, CNBC, and NPR, and more, Cameron has guided countless families through the challenges of discussing money matters with their loved ones. Today, we're going to break down why these conversations matter, how to approach them without creating conflict, and practical tips to ensure your family's financial future is secure. Cameron, thanks so much for taking time out of your busy day to share your knowledge, because this is a topic that desperately needs to be talked about often, and it's ignored.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Now, before we dive into the book and your expertise, I'd love to start with a personal note. What inspired you to write Mom and Dad, We Need to Talk, and how did your own caregiving journey shape the lessons we share?
I was inspired to write the book because I did not have these conversations with my own parents soon enough. And so I learned the hard way how important these conversations really are. When my father died at the age of 61, I was shocked to learn that he died without a will, even though he was an attorney and in a second marriage. And that second wife was also an attorney. There should have been a will or a trust or something there that had put his wishes into writing. And then a few years later, my mom was diagnosed at the age of 65 with Alzheimer's disease. And again, I had not had any detailed conversations with her about her finances. And so I had to play detective. Yes. To get the information that I needed about her finances, as she was forgetting those details herself.
Yes. So why do you think money is still considered such a taboo topic for so many families?
It wasn't my family. My father would always say, don't talk about money. It's impolite. I'm sure he was raised that way too. My mother was not quite as tight-lipped about money matters. I had a general idea about where she stood financially after my parents got divorced. Of course, growing up, I could observe things and make my own assumptions about my parents' finances. I think a lot of it's a generational thing. I think that younger generations are a little more inclined now to talk about money, especially with their partners, with their children, with other family members. My husband and I have been talking to our kids about money matters since they were young, and we actually sat our two oldest children down recently and had this conversation. We shared all of the details of our finances and estate planning with them. And some people are also embarrassed too. If they're not in a good position financially, it's hard to admit to your kids that you haven't saved for retirement or that you have a lot of debt. And people, because of that shame, they don't want to have to confront it.
And I will tell you right now, I've been a nurse for 54 years, and I can tell you the baby boomers. Number one, I'm excited that you wrote this book, because this is what I'm finding. Your experience is a solution that we need for the incoming of the silver tsunami, and they're going to be able to find solutions to problems that we've already faced and addressed. So I appreciate that about you. But I see the baby boomers in my generation, I see people that are old family dynamics start to play. When you get into that, you're not supposed to parent your parent, but you feel like you have to. And I'm learning, and I've learned and seen, there are people that are so private about anything. They do not want to share one iota of information. And it's really sad. And the other thing is, a lot of them just feel like their time is never going to come. And they're going to live forever, so they don't have to worry about it. Yeah, I've seen this ongoing. And I think that what I want to make people aware of as we get into this conversation is our Medicare program has gone to a cost-sharing platform. And what we are seeing is people being more financially responsible for the care that they require. The only thing our government did was give billions of dollars to the insurance industry to be gatekeepers. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but Medicare Advantage plans are actually have a copay of $200 to $500 a day if you're in skilled care or rehab. Who can afford that? That's why I tell people you really have to start addressing things early, because if you want to protect your finances, you've got to do it now, because the government will take it. I'm seeing it. They will.
I think what a lot of people also don't understand is that Medicare does not pay for long-term care. It won't pay for the type of care that you would need, for example, if you had Alzheimer's disease, like my mother. It's not going to pay for memory care or assisted living. It will pay for up to 100 days in a skilled nursing facility.
It no longer pays
after you've been in a hospital.
Or 3 days.
Right. You have to be in the hospital, then sent to rehab and skilled nursing. Medicaid is the top payer of long-term care services.
Yes.
Or I should say it has been historically the top payer of long-term care services in the U.S. Who knows what's going to happen with the changes in Medicaid funding?
It's not Medicaid funding that we need to be concerned about. They tell us we have 100 days of skilled rehab. We do not. With the lower reimbursements, we no longer have restorative rehab in nursing homes because they can't afford it. The reimbursement is so low for rehab that patients, I am seeing, and the whole country is experiencing, the most unprecedented number of unsafe discharges to home. No matter if you have a stroke or a head injury, whatever, I am seeing patients with Medicare Advantage discharged between the 11th and 14th day, whether they're independent or able to be taken care of. And and with traditional Medicare, they're staying 20 days and then they're discharging them, because the facilities get a higher reimbursement for not providing rehab. And that's what we are facing. That's why I'm telling people, you have got to get your finances in order, and you've got to talk about these things, because when you purchase like a Medicare Advantage, you're thinking, oh yeah, I get free dental, I get free eye care. And then you find and everybody, I don't care who you are, is going to end up in a skilled unit or rehab at some point in their life. And when you hear $200 to $500 a day copay, it's shocking people. And they're being threatened by the facilities that if they appeal and they lose the appeal, which they wouldn't, but they put fear into them, that they will have to pay double or more than their copay. And so people are taking their family members home, and home care is just as bad. So I think I'm really excited and want to impress on the listeners how valuable your information is. So what are some warning signs that it's time for adult children to start having those financial conversations with their parents?
I would say that you don't want to wait until there are warning signs, because that means there's already a problem. And those conversations can no longer be hypothetical. You can't say, what if this were to happen, mom and dad? What involvement would you like me to have? If this were to happen, how would you pay for this? If this were to happen, would I have the legal right to make financial decisions for your healthcare? Now you're saying, this is happening and I need this information right now because I need to be able to help you out. And that's a very different conversation. It's going to be much more emotionally charged. And if your parents are digging their heels in and you can't get that information, then you're going to have some real troubles.
Yes.
Because those estate planning documents, and I use the word estate planning documents, and that makes it sound like something that only really rich people do. And I'll explain what it is. But those estate planning documents might not be in place. And so what's an estate planning document? A will that spells out who gets what when you die. And if you don't have a will or a trust, state law will determine who gets your things. And so your stuff might go to someone you don't want to receive it. When you can't just assume that your family is going to sort everything out harmoniously. When money is involved, and even if it's a small amount, or even it's the favorite family car or the home or something, people will fight over these things. And so there's the will or trust. There's the power of attorney, which lets you name someone to make financial decisions for you if you can't. There's the healthcare power of attorney. It's also called a healthcare proxy or a healthcare surrogate. Yes. And that lets you name someone to make medical decisions for you. And there's an advanced directive or living will that lets you specify what end of life medical care you do or do not want. And these documents must be drafted and signed while you are still mentally competent. So if, for example, your parent had a stroke and is no longer able to speak for themselves,
yes,
that an attorney is not going to let your parents sign that document anymore. You've got to prove that you're competent to sign it. And so at that point, you have to go to court. You have to petition the court to become your parents' conservator or guardian so you can manage their finances for them and make medical decisions for them. And this can cost tens of thousands of dollars, and it can take several months, and you're essentially putting your parents on trial. This can be avoided by making sure these documents are in place. Are they expensive? Potentially. It depends on what you want to consider expensive. You can get this full suite of estate planning documents depending on where you live for a couple $1,000s. If you cannot afford that, if your parents can't afford it, but you had the means to pay for it, I would encourage you to offer to pay for it for your parents as a
100%. Absolutely.
And if they can only afford to pay for one of those documents, I would encourage that they meet with an estate planning or elder law attorney to draft that power of attorney document. That one is so important. And that one, if it's not done correctly, you as the adult child are going to run into the most problems. Your parents' bank, you've got to show up with that document to prove that you are indeed their agent under power of attorney. The bank might say no. And if you've got an attorney who's written that document, then you call the attorney and get the attorney on the phone to help you out so that you can, this is a valid document. I have every right to manage my parents' finances for them now because mom has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, for example. So having that conversation early can ensure that your parents have those documents. You can talk to them about, do they have a way to pay for long-term care if they need it? And the sooner you figure out if they don't have a way, then they can meet with someone to help them come up with a plan. Again, maybe it's that elder law attorney, even paying to meet with a financial advisor for an hour or two for them to look at their assets. You can make sure that you know how they pay their bills so that you can make sure they're getting paid for them if they end up in the hospital for whatever reason. Again, if you wait until there's that emergency and you're seeing the warning signs, then that conversation is going to be more difficult. There won't be a plan to deal with the emergency. Those legal documents might not be in place, and it's going to make life harder for you and for your parents.
Yes, yes. And people don't understand if they put their documents in a safety deposit box and that person passes, they will not be able to get into that box for a very long time.
Ask if they have those documents, ask where they're located, and make sure you can get access to them. And
100%.
The lockbox at the bank is not the best place to do it. Encourage them to keep them maybe in a home safe.
Yes.
You can access it if necessary.
Yes. What are some common mistakes people make when trying to talk about finances with the parents?
Couple mistakes. I think, first of all, if you have siblings, it's a mistake not to talk to your siblings first. If you go to mom and dad and have this conversation and then your siblings find out later, your siblings might think that you have gone behind their back and maybe you're trying to win favor with mom and dad so that you get everything when they pass away. So you want to talk to your siblings. All of you can get on the same page and decide who's going to initiate the conversation. Is it one of you? Is it all of you? When do you want to start the conversation? How do you want to start the conversation? You can also talk to your siblings about what role each of you might be willing to play in mom and dad's financial lives and care as they get older. And so good idea to talk to your siblings first. When you talk to your parents, I think that there are a variety of approaches that you can use to make it seem more natural. You can tell a story about a friend or a colleague who had to perhaps get involved with their parents' finances because of a caregiving situation, or perhaps it's a cautionary tale. My best friend's father passed away. He didn't have a will, and it was very difficult for the family to deal with that situation. Let's make sure we don't end up in the same situation. You could start the conversation by asking your parents for advice, and that avoids the role reversal. Mom and dad.
100%. Yes.
If you're still relatively young and just starting out, mom and dad just had kids. Does that mean I need a will now? Do I need life insurance? Or maybe you're in your 40s and 50s already, and so you want to ask your parents about retirement planning. Mom and dad, I'm trying to plan for my retirement 10, 20 years down the road. Can you share with me what steps you took? And their response is going to give you clues about what they did. And then you're going to keep the conversation going by asking more questions. Yeah. You can even start the conversation by talking to your parents about scams, because we are all targeted by scammers. And so you can share a phone call that you received. I just got a call from someone claiming to be with the IRS. Mom and dad, did you know that the IRS is never going to call you? Just want to make sure you knew that. It's a way to get parents who maybe aren't comfortable talking about money, talking about a topic. And scams are a great way to introduce the idea of money conversations to your parents.
Yes. I recommend, like you were saying, have a family meeting without the parent first, especially if there's lots of siblings. And that's a really hard thing for a lot of people to do, because when they've been away from each other for a long time, maybe, and they've all moved on in their worlds, living their lives, and now they come back together as a group and old family dynamics play. I'm the bossy know-it-all big sister. They would already tell me, no, we're not doing what you say. You can't run. And then there's my brother who's the peacemaker, and my sister who's the baby, and my other brother him and I are 13 months apart. We both are alphas in our own way. It's really hard that you have those dynamics. So I encourage people I have a resource, a family meeting guide that gives you all the rules and everything that you need to do to have a conversation and get on the same page before you approach the parents, because that's a whole nother ball game. So I really like that. I think that those were good points that you brought out, and I just know, having come from a big Irish family, all the dysfunctional chaos that we cause. We had one of the smaller families of 4. And then there's the poor person who's just the solo child, the only child, and the challenges they face. And sometimes they have to get extended family members involved. And that's really important so that they have support when they do approach this. So I'm going to ask you, how can adult children approach these conversations without making their parents feel defensive or disrespected? That's a good one.
For sure. And I mentioned a couple of ways already on
Yes.
how to start the conversation naturally. It is very important not to be condescending when you talk to your parents. So you don't want to come into this conversation, for example, by pointing out that perhaps they're making mistakes with their finances.
Yes.
Or that you're noticing that they're falling for scams more frequently, or that you're worried that you're going to have to take care of them because they have no way to pay for care. Do not be critical or condescending in any way, because of course that's going to put your parents on the defensive right off the bat, and there's not any chance of having a productive conversation at that point. These conversations need to come from a place of love. And so when you're talking to them, it's okay to tell your parents, look, I know this is awkward. It's awkward for you and it's awkward for me. But the reason I want to have this conversation, Mom and Dad, is because I love you. And you took such good care of me when I was growing up. And if I ever need to take care of you, I want to do a good job. But to do that, I need some information from you. And I need to know what your wishes are. And I don't want to make any mistakes. And so I need to know how you're managing your finances so I can manage them for you in a way that you would approve of. If something does happen, let them know that they have control in this situation. I don't want to take away your control at all. In fact, I want you to stay in control. And the only way you can do that is by telling me what you want, telling me what your wishes are. Because if I don't know what your wishes are, I'm going to have to guess. And I might make some mistakes. And I might make the wrong decisions. And I would hate to do that. I would feel really guilty about it if I made the wrong decisions about your money.
And I have to tell my listeners out there that it's good to start early with these conversations before they're really sick. Even if they've just retired, it's really good. I actually believe anybody over the age of 18 should have advanced directives and things in place. People say that's crazy. No, it's not. And what you want at 18 isn't what you want at 20 or 30 or 50 or 70 or 100. But I also think that anybody who is in a relationship, whether they're married or not, should have all these systems in place, because you never know when an accident or something will happen, a stroke will happen to young people and their whole lives change. So it's important to open those communication lines and have dialogues. But the other thing is, when you get rejected, don't quit. Just do it again at another time, in another way. You'll find the right way. It just takes it. You'll get to know what works and what doesn't work with your parent. And sometimes you just have to function in crisis mode. And that's when you get into the detective mode, like we talked about. And you have to do things behind their backs in their homes. I know it's awful, but you need to get things prepared. And we can talk about that later. But how can parents involve their adult children in financial planning without feeling like they're giving up independence?
I certainly think if the parents initiate the conversation, that lets them maintain control of the dialogue. You get to decide what you're discussing and what information you're sharing and at what point you're sharing that information. My husband and I had the conversation with our 2 college-age daughters. We shared a lot of details. People don't have to share as many details as we did. You don't have to share how much money is in your checking account, but your kids need to know, at the least, where you bank.
Yes.
It's a good idea for them to know how you pay the bills. Are you writing checks? Are things being set up to be paid automatically? And I know sometimes the children don't want to have these conversations because it forces them to come face to face with the fact that their parents are not going to be there forever, or that as their parents get older, they might need help. And that's hard. That's really difficult for a lot of us. But again, it's a lot more difficult when you're met with those situations and you don't have a plan and you don't have any information. Like if you lose a parent, it's devastating. What's worse though is having to settle an estate and you don't know anything about their accounts, their assets, where anything is, and you're grieving and you're digging through every nook and cranny in your parents' house, trying to get access to the computer to see if there's information, going through files, or again, if you've got a parent who has a stroke and now they're in the hospital and you've got to pay the bills and the doctor won't talk to you because you haven't been named healthcare power of attorney. The bank won't let you sign a check to pay the hospital bill because you haven't been named power of attorney. That's worse. That is a whole lot worse than having a few awkward conversations.
And credit card companies won't even talk to you if you don't have. So when you're trying to get information on, because I have had so many families go through this where they're trying to find who has credit cards, where they're located, how much is on the credit card, what's the balance. And unless they have in their hand your legal power of attorney, they're not going to give any information out at all. And it's very frustrating because families are the caregivers or the adult children are trying to hold it all together. Wow. And the other thing we're missing is there are a lot of family caregivers like you that have children that are adult children. They're still in high school or college or whatever. And you've got to manage them and you're managing another household. So the whole gamut of all the things that could go wrong will go wrong. Murphy's Law always happens.
That's true.
So what does the role of transparency play in preventing financial crises related to aging, illness, or dementia? Talk about how smooth it can be.
Okay, so I'll give you an example from my experience with my mom. So I did not have many details about her finances before I got involved with her finances after she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. I did get her to meet with an estate planning attorney to update her documents. And so I had that power of attorney document, the medical power of attorney document. That made things easy. We went to the bank together, let the bank know that I had been named her power of attorney. And so then I could get access to her bank account. Like I said, I had to play detective. But over time, as her Alzheimer's progressed and I played a bigger and bigger role in her finances and eventually managed all of her finances, it got to the point where I knew everything about her finances. And so when she passed away, because I had all those details, I knew every account that she had, I knew everything. It made that process after her death easier. I knew which accounts needed to be closed, and I had that information. I knew that there was a small life insurance policy that I could tap to pay for funeral expenses. I knew her social security number, and so that made things easier to close that account.
Yes.
It made that difficult time a little bit easier. It was still difficult. It was still a hassle to have to deal with that after losing my mom, but I can't imagine going through that process and starting from scratch and not having any idea what sort of accounts she had that needed to be closed, if she had any debt, if she had any, what sort of investment accounts she might have had. That would have been a nightmare. And so having that information made a difficult situation easier.
I recently have a girlfriend whose sister died unexpectedly, and she was a CEO of a company, and she had lost her husband several years ago. And of course, he never shared anything with her about anything. And here she was stuck running a business, trying to find everything out. She was smart enough, because she has 2 children, but one is autistic and he's in his 20s and he needs structure and support and help with his daily life. So she actually, this is a typical woman story. I can't believe this, because she was actually in the healthcare field. she was having pains for a couple weeks and she just ignored them, thought it was heartburn. And it got so bad one day, now her daughter lived right down the street, but she got in the car and drove herself to the ER. And when she got there, she had all her paperwork, and wheeling her to the test to do a cardiac test on her, she had a massive heart attack and died. Oh. So totally unprepared were the family. But because she had been through what she went through with her husband, it was pure hell, and really awakened her and alerted her to what she needed to do. And she actually had everything in order, from where she wanted to be buried, everything. And even, in fact, her daughter and her husband have agreed to move into the house that she bought, because that was her intent. If I die, Chris can't change his environment. We have to adjust to him. And that's a mom that loves her child. And the sister and brother-in-law, hey, this is cool because it's really nice. And they're able to take over the business, and everything has gone so smoothly, and it just decreases the stress. So it gives you an opportunity to actually grieve.
Yes.
You're absolutely able to, you're not being pulled and being called by credit card companies or any the attorneys, or somebody saying we're referring you to the credit agency or whatever. I'm like, it just makes it so much easier, and you actually do have a chance to grieve and feel your loss, which is so important to work through your grieving process. So I really encourage this. So you are part of the sandwich generation. What strategies do you recommend for balancing those financial responsibilities for both your kids and aging parents?
It's difficult. And I think people need to realize you can't find a good balance. You have to be aware of that. There are some compromises that you are going to have to make. I think it is important to remember that you should not sacrifice your own financial well-being. And
could you say that again? I want my listeners to hear that, because that is a big thing that happens with family caregivers. They become financially devastated.
Some end up filing for bankruptcy. You should not sacrifice your own financial well-being. And it might feel like you're abandoning mom and dad, but if you have children,
yes,
you cannot abandon your children, especially if they're still young, like mine were,
yes,
because they're counting on you for financial support. And the thing is, if you wreck your own finances, you're going to perpetuate that cycle. You will not have enough money to support yourself in retirement. You will not have the funds to pay for any sort of professional care if you need care. Your kids are going to have to step in, maybe quit their jobs to care for you or to provide financial support for you. That's going to hurt their finances. They have children. It's going to impact their kids, and it's just going to continue and continue. But you say, all right, of course, I can't just leave mom and dad. I can't leave them out to dry. I have to provide some support. This is when you look into what government benefits they might qualify for. For example, if your parents served in the military,
yes,
VA has a program called Aid in Attendance. They can provide financial support for caregiving if you need caregiving support.
And that's a really good point. And I want to tell caregivers, as soon as your family member but even before they become ill, investigate what's available, those benefits, because the government turnaround time it's a bureaucracy, 2 to 3 years, and it's gotten worse since COVID. So you're without benefits. That's why as soon as you even begin to talk about this process, you should look into that. Make sure because you have to find, again, it's the important paperwork, the DOD number, I don't know what it is, form that the government. That is really a good point, because so many people are vets that have benefits available to them that could financially help them so many ways, and they aren't aware of it. And so I always say, be active, be proactive, and look into it as soon as you can. You may not need it now, but get all the information so when the time comes, you can apply for those, because the turnaround time is so slow.
And this is where it can be really a good idea to spend a little money to save yourself some money in the long run by working with an elder law attorney.
Yes.
You want someone who specializes in helping people get those VA benefits and qualify for Medicaid. As I mentioned earlier, Medicaid is the top payer of long-term care services in the U.S. It will pay for care in a skilled nursing facility in every state. Your parent might not need that skilled nursing facility. In some states, it'll pay for assisted living, and it will pay sometimes to bring someone into the home. In some states, it will even pay family members, or I should say, essentially reimburse family members if they're providing that care. And so if you're caring for the parent, you might be able to get paid through Medicaid, but working with an elder law, and that's the name of elder law attorney, who specializes in helping people get Medicaid benefits. They're going to know how to get through the bureaucracy. They're going to know what you qualify. They're going to know what the rules are in your state. And that can pay off big time. If your parents own their house or have paid off most of their mortgage and they have a lot of equity in that home, as a last resort, you could help them get a reverse mortgage to essentially tap the equity in their home so they have money to pay for care. You could sell the home. Like, they might be saying, please, I need to stay in my home. Please don't sell the home. As difficult as that might be financially, it might make a lot more sense to sell the home and move them in with you, or move them into a facility, because paying for someone to come into their house around the clock to care for them can actually be more expensive than moving them into an assisted living facility, memory care, skilled nursing facility. And explore your options. Don't just assume that your only choice is to be the primary caregiver. Yes, you might want to do that. Your parents might want to do that. But again, you cannot sacrifice your financial well-being. Mom and dad might say, look, I can't believe you're doing this to me. You might get a huge guilt trip. If your parents were in their normal state of mind, if they weren't facing a healthcare emergency, they might have said to you, if you had that conversation earlier, I don't want you to have to sacrifice your well-being. I don't want you to be a burden. Now the situation's different when they're saying, don't abandon me, because perhaps they're not thinking the same way as they would have when they were still healthy. And so again, having that conversation earlier can let you know what their wishes are. And they might say, like I told my kids, I don't expect you to put your life on hold to care for me. Your father and I had the funds available to pay for care. If I need care, don't abandon me, but make sure the bills get paid. Find a nice facility to put me in, but I'm not expecting you to be the one to provide hands-on care.
First of all, I want my listeners, and I tell them this often, but I want them to hear it. 63% of family caregivers become seriously ill or die from the chronic stress of caregiving. What they don't know is many live at poverty level or below once they are, and some are even homeless because they stayed in a home providing care for their family member, and then the uninvolved siblings and extended family members, like vultures, come in after the person dies and provides nothing for that caregiver. And that's why I really encourage people, every caregiver, to put, and they hate when I say this, but I'm going to continue to say it, you have to look at this caregiving position as a job, because so get a family caregiver contract in place. And then if you do have uninvolved siblings and extended family members, they need to know what your boundaries and limits are. So if you say, I can care for somebody until they become sexually abusive, or I'm afraid they're going to hurt me, or even if I don't want to provide intimate care when they're incontinent, those are real issues. And then everybody knows, okay, so what do we do then? I also expect everybody to say you want time off for your own health care, to be able to go to the gym or just sit outside and breathe. And people aren't able to do that. So I encourage the family health care contract or family caregiver contract. And I encourage everybody to build a care team partner support group that will help provide practical assistance. And that's really important too, because people don't understand the average caregiving journey is 6 to 7 years, but it can be as long as 20.
And it was 12 for me.
Yes. And it's just devastating. And we talk about bringing in the professionals like the financial planners or elder care law attorneys or even CPAs. How do you do that without creating more tension?
Sometimes that third party, getting that third party involved can make things a little bit easier because parents might be more willing to listen to the suggestions of that unbiased professional third party than to listen to the suggestions of their children. Like I was so happy when after the attorney had drafted my mom's estate planning documents, when she said, you and your daughter should go to the bank together and show them this power of attorney document. There was the attorney telling my mom to do it. I didn't have to ask my mom to do it. She took the attorney's advice, and I was like, wow, this is great. Thank you so much. When my mother when she was in the late stage of Alzheimer's, it was easier for some of the professionals at the facility where she was to get her to do things than for me to get her to do things.
Absolutely. I mean, that's not uncommon.
They're doing it day in and day out. And so the attorneys, the financial planners, the accountants, they are better equipped sometimes to help families navigate these conversations because this is what they do. This is their line of work. And another great professional to reach out to is an aging life care professional. They're also called geriatric care managers. And these people can
I'm a geriatric care manager, yes.
And they can mediate these family meetings.
Yes.
And they can point your resources in your community and they can help you find that attorney. So that's a great resource.
It really is. And people don't utilize care managers enough. They really don't. And it's really sad. So what advice would you give families who avoided these conversations until a crisis hits? Buckle down.
That's right. My advice is, obviously it depends on the situation. If it's death, there will not be any arguments with the parent at that point. The parent is gone. Now you've got to worry about the siblings. And if there's not a will, then there might be some fights. And so, of course, working with an attorney is a good idea at that point. If there is a situation like a dementia diagnosis, a stroke, Parkinson's diagnosis, again, calling that family meeting and saying, hey guys, we've got something difficult that we need to face. But we're going to get through this together. And to do that, we need to gather some information. Mom and Dad need to share some information. We need to remember that we need to do what's best for mom or dad. So we're going to have to find a way to get on the same page. And letting your parents know, look, mom and dad, this is the point where I'm going to need some information. I've got to make sure you're getting paid. I need to know what assets you have so that, I can get you the care that you need. And I don't want to make any mistakes. I'm just being very clear and open and honest.
One of the things I encourage, if you do have a family meeting, everybody in your family has a skill. You may not see them as a sibling that, no, they can't do anything, they're irresponsible or whatever, but everyone has a skill and an ability to help in some way. It may be someone is great with money or they're in banking or accounting, and then they're the ones you want to have look at for the credit cards and the finances, go through the finances with you. Oftentimes it takes two and go through the papers to put things organized. But then there's the maintenance of the house and other things. There's somebody in that family who should be able to help manage the home and to see what needs fixed, what's broken, what those kinds of issues as well. And then there's the end of life issues you always have to address as well. And there's got to be someone in the family that is willing to sit and maybe have a minister or a person of faith come in and say, what do we do to plan end of life? There's a lot of things. And now they have end of life specialists and death doulas that will come in and help you plan prior to your death. I just had a gentleman who had a life celebration, and he's 89, and he had such a good time and got so much good whiskey. He decided he's going to do it yearly till he passes. I love it. I love it. Oh. If listeners remember just one piece of advice, Cameron, today from our conversation, what should it be to start moving from taboo to truth in their families?
These conversations need to happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
You will find yourself in a much more difficult situation if you do not have these conversations. And the sooner you start trying, if it takes a while to get through to your parents, then the more likely you will be able to start getting some information before an emergency occurs. And,
yes.
And for some people, it truly does take years to get parents to open up and share even the smallest.
Thank you for saying that, because it absolutely, that's why I say don't stop trying, because it may take years, because people live in denial. Our coping mechanism is the ostrich syndrome. Put your head in the sand and just ignore until you can't anymore. And so that's why I say be patient, don't give up, and keep trying. Cameron, how do people reach you? And I want to make sure that they know how to find your course, your book, because it's so valuable. It's such an important need right now. We have a silver tsunami. We've got 53 million people caregiving right now, and it's going to get to 130 million in the next few years. So there's so many of us, and this is a book that they need to find.
So the easiest way to get information about me and my book is at CameronHuddleston.com. I've got a page with links to get my book at Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all the other various places where books are sold. I've got a couple of free resources on my website. I've got a scam red flag sheet that you can download and give to your
wonderful
to put on their refrigerator or hang up by the phone. I've got an in case of emergency organizer. And this is one thing that people can do is if their parents don't want to tell them information about their finances, ask them to write it down. And this lets them maintain control of that information. Just say, tell me when and how I can access this information. And they can put it all in that in case of emergency organizer that I've got. It's free on my website. So that's a tactic you can use.
Yes, I love that. We also I create a permanent page on caregiver relief. And at the bottom of that page, they'll have all your contact information as well, so that it'll be there permanently, so people will be able to find you as the silver tsunami upon us, and they can ripple in through the waves and find you. So thank you so much for your time, Cameron. I really appreciate it, and I know my listeners appreciate it. To my family caregivers out there, you are the most important part of the caregiving equation. Without you, it all falls apart. So please learn to be gentle with yourself. Practice self-care every day because you are worth it.